Jim Collison, we are live here at Infotech. They're tearing things down around us. This ought to be pretty interesting to see if
they can't take us, though.
They can't take us, but we're on the very last interview of the day. We're okay. They're giving us the thumbs up. We're okay to keep going. Very last interview of the day, Dustin Tower. Dustin, we interviewed you last year,
yep,
and so thanks for coming back and doing that as well. A little new focus, but for folks who are watching it for the first time, last year I didn't have great lighting, and so all the videos came out dark, and so they were almost unusable.
So I look better in the dark anyway. So.
I do too. I have a face for radio, but tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you're from, those kinds of things.
From St. Paul, Minnesota. I work for a company called Easel Solutions. We are kind of part training company. We do a lot of Adobe training, lots of web development training, lots of e-learning training, and then the other side of it is actual consulting work around those things, because some of our clients want to learn and some just want us to do it for them. So we kind of do a wide variety of things, but I got my hands on lots of different tools.
We talked about some Flash last year, I think.
Yep.
That's really on its way out, right, for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, the use case for it is definitely becoming less appropriate for just your average website. If you're doing a lot of video delivery and you're doing a lot of gaming or really, really high performance graphics, the state of the web browsers are still not quite at the point where they can support a lot of that, especially if you've got to support legacy browsers. But with the amount of JavaScript frameworks out there and a lot of front-end development tools, there's a lot of Flash elements that are being removed.
Yeah, it's sunsetting for the most part.
Yep.
How long do you think before Flash is completely gone?
I don't think it'll. I think we're talking like 10 years before it's ever really gone, just because of we work a lot in the e-learning field, and people building courses that have audio and video and animations and things synchronized with them. The tools that are developing a lot of those are still heavily kind of phased in the Flash era, and that's it's a lot of redevelopment that has to happen before that would be so. It'll always kind of be there, but where it should be used kind of depends.
I was kind of wondering if the curtains were going to go, and they are.
I think it's helping
awesome. It's actually not a bad drawback. That's very cool. This will be the greatest interview ever. From that
we're just ignoring what's happening around us.
I know. Pretty soon they're going to take my monitors down, and we'll just keep talking. This is awesome. So. What is this? JavaScript, of course, is becoming very, very important in what we're doing with the web going forward.
It's always been there, but the browser support for a lot of the capabilities just hasn't been around until the last 3 or 4 years. So my presentation was on kind of how to pick a JavaScript framework, because there's a lot of them out there, and they all kind of do the same thing in the end, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And it takes a lot of the grunt work out of web development, because they take care of a lot of those lack of browser support or some of the hard techniques that take a lot of code. They simplify by streamlining the process.
What's the problem with that, though? And with everything, there's a backside. So as we moved to these libraries and stuff, what's the backside of that?
I think one of the initial problems is that there's not a lot of standard for how to use them. It's kind of up to the developers of the framework of how they want to structure their code, how they want to have you use their code, and there's no just this is the best tool or best framework to use. So if you're kind of a new developer, it's hard to pick. It's hard to decide because it's not a one-way kind of model that it goes with. But and then along with that, there still are unforeseen hurdles that come up, because one browser might add support for something, another browser might start not supporting a certain feature, and so it's always kind of a little bit of building a house and moving sand right now. But but there are really good frameworks out there to work with that are well community supported, and you as a average developer like me don't have to worry too much about solving those hard problems.
Yeah, what do you like? What are some of the frameworks that you like right now?
The one I work with the most is AngularJS. It's made by Google, but I like it. I like the binding structure that's in it, because I came from a Flash developer background, and there's some analogies there that or metaphors that kind of go back and forth. But frameworks like Backbone or Ember or some of these other ones that are out there, they all have their pros and cons, and like I said, a lot of them do the same thing, just maybe in a slightly different way. So it is more of a question on what fits your development pattern, or what fits your developer team when you're as far as like a philosophical or architectural structure.
Yeah, how do you go about evaluating that? I mean, if you say you're a new developer, We are, Jody and I are both in the college space a lot. We're hiring a lot of developers right out of college. By the way, they're not teaching any of that in college right now. It's Java or C#. If you're lucky, it's mostly Java, right, from that standpoint. So if you're evaluating that as from a developer, how would you recommend getting started on that?
Well, I think it's one of the sites I show in my presentation is todomvc.com. So just TODOMVC.com. And this is the site that builds or has built a simple little to-do application, like your to-do list, got to go grocery shopping, got to cut the grass. But it builds it in all these different frameworks. So you can kind of compare how one framework builds it with another. Because underneath the hood, it's all JavaScript. So it's all a fundamental language that web developers learn. And again, one might appeal more to you, and I like Angular because it's very easy for me to quickly ramp up an application, and the kind of apps I work on are not large enough where I'm too concerned about not structuring it the right way. But part of the reason I decided on it is because I would just compared it with some of the other frameworks that are out there, and I did so with that little to-do app. So I'm kind of comparing apples to apples. The same app but developed with different frameworks.
Okay. What would you say to someone maybe coming out of college, right? I mean, they're just starting to do it. What kind of advice would you give to them in these days? I mean, it's moved quickly in the last couple of years. What kind of advice would you give them?
From the front-end development side, building build it with web technology. The first is that you have solid foundations in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because those are the fundamental languages. Those aren't ever going to change, or at least anytime soon. When it comes to start building web applications with the JavaScript framework, pick one and start using it. Just start playing around with it, start working with it, because if you end up getting into a situation where you learned Angular, you know AngularJS real well, but then you get hired by a company that's using Backbone or another library, well, the metaphors are the same between these frameworks. They all have controllers and service layers and ways of building custom components. So you're going to transition more quickly between those two, as long as you kind of understand those techniques.
Yeah, I hear a lot of Node.js in that. Why does that not come up in the conversation yet?
Well, well, partially because I only had 45 minutes in my presentation.
All right,
so
that makes sense.
So I didn't even finish what I wanted to talk about. But Node.js has been kind of this semi-truck that's come through the developer community, because it's streamlined so many processes. And if I take one simple example, that when you build a JavaScript app and you've got all your code, one of the things you need to do with your code is you need to take out all the white space before you put it up online, because white space is file size and that takes up room. Well, that's called minifying, and you would never want to do this by hand, nor would you want to have to copy and paste it into a tool and have it do that. And Node.js has a process for doing that, and using other task tools like Grunt, which is a plugin for Node.js or an add-on to Node.js, streamline these processes that we haven't really had anything to do that for us, because JavaScript's been kind of just out there for us to use. There hasn't been an IDE or a developer tool around JavaScript, like we have with Studio or Eclipse or some of the other tools. So Node.js has started kind of filling in all these gaps of like, oh, you need something that resizes all your images, or that creates multiple image copies for Retina displays and other displays. Great. Just find a package in Node.js, install it, and use it. So
is that the beginning of an IDE for JavaScript in some?
I wouldn't say it's the beginning of an IDE, especially because most of the stuff's command line based within Node. But it becomes sort of like a platform for developing JavaScript. So it's kind of done what the IDE does underneath the hood, but still with the flexibility of not having that overhead of it. There has to be a button that does what I want it to do.
Yeah. So, you think JavaScript will move in that way, where the development is less complex, and
tools will develop? I mean, tools like Studio or Eclipse, like Sublime Text is a simple little text editor on the Mac that people have used, but now all of a sudden becomes such a powerful editor. Tools are adding support for JavaScript and integrating with these processes, but I think they're not going to be able to move as fast as a platform like Node.js can move, where someone needs a new library or a new process, they quick write it, upload it to the NPM site, and it's available for everyone to use.
Speaking of moving fast, they're moving fast around.
They are moving fast. They're going to want our table.
They are. Let me move fast with you. we're okay. They keep giving us, yeah, you're good, you're good. Let me. This is awesome.
Yeah.
This never happened to me before, where they just tear it down around me. It's pretty awesome. When we talk about the session that you gave, anything else? Any other points that you hit in your session that you just want to highlight here?
Well, the main thing is that people start using a tool, because like I said, I know from my experience when I started getting into doing more JavaScript development and more web app development, it was kind of at this, I don't know where to start. I don't, I want to make the right decision right away.
Right.
And what I've kind of realized is that you can make a lot of mistakes along the way. You can pick one framework that you end up not liking down the road and switch to another one because you've still educated yourself in the right way to build it. Looking at other tools that help you with your workflow and other workflow tools like we mentioned with Node, or using Grunt to help automate your build processes and things. These are all ways to be able to keep growing your developer skills while still staying versatile and able to adjust. And a big thing that a lot of the top developers are doing is they're putting their code up on GitHub. They're open sourcing things because building kind of in the open is kind of the best way to be able to get feedback on the way you're doing things, to collaborate with other people. And I think the more you do that, the more you just kind of use the community around you, the more you benefit from that as well.
How did this shift the question just a little bit? But how did the open source community get let down with the Heartbleed problem that we just had? Right. I mean, we've been told open source, right? People checking it, it's more secure. And I'm generalizing, right? I don't want to, don't send me your email. I get it, but certainly that was open source all the way.
OpenSSL is open source, and I think something like Heartbleed could happen to even a proprietary, SSL structure.
To be clear, yes.
And that's kind of the thing is, because it's open source, that means the code is available. Anyone can look for vulnerabilities. Anyone can, try to exploit it. But that same kind of thing happens everywhere. I think the benefit of open source is we're able to learn more from what happens because we can ourselves look at it, and also there's a little bit more, it's more controlled because there's more variety of people contributing. It's not just one company making the decision on what it's supposed to do.
A little bit more mixed DNA, probably.
That's exactly
from that standpoint.
It is. So.
And good and bad. It takes that, you still take the bad with that. You can have bad code go in even with that. And that vulnerability was out there for a while. But you're right. It will be scrutinized. This will be an example that will be
as everything
in
is
schools,
nowadays.
Right? I mean, no. And I think I don't say that in a bad way. I say that in a very good way.
And that is a good thing.
It can be, to your point, it can be an example that can be used because it's open. If this would have happened to a Microsoft or a Google, Google maybe being different. Microsoft definitely would have never let it out. But it would have never been studied, so to speak, and we may not have known.
No, and that's the thing is that it's out there for everyone to learn from, and again, things like this happen, and we don't know how many vulnerabilities were caught by the community fixing this stuff ahead of time, along the way. So it's a good platform. Like I said, that's with anything open source. Is your code's out there, and it's there to be criticized. It's there to be ridiculed. It's there to be complimented. It's available, and I think all of that ends up shaping developers in a better way.
Do you ever get any feedback when you check your code in on the open source community? Do you ever get any feedback from
I don't think I have enough out there or popular enough for people to give me feedback on, but I'm always open to it. So
that would always be my worry. It's like when I get feedback when I'm podcasting, you're like, send me your feedback, and then you get it, and you're like, ooh.
You know what? If you're getting feedback though, you're doing something correctly, good or bad.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
It means you're important enough that somebody cares to give you feedback.
Exactly. Sometimes they're just trolls, and
that's true.
And you never really know. So, Dustin, anything else in your topic that you covered that I might have missed?
No, that was the gist of it. Like I said, it's all about just getting started, playing around with it, picking a framework, going with it, and if you don't like it, there's plenty more out there to use them.
That's good. That's good advice, and I appreciate. We'll kind of keep this short because I oftentimes look for. When I'm talking with college students and we're talking about JavaScript, and I tell them how important that is going to be in the future. This might be a nice little tool. Say, hey, look, I did this interview. Go out. We gave them some tips on some things to do. Maybe you and I can collaborate on a little rundown, so to speak, of just some. You can help me with the links for some folks and some of the things that they need to have. And in the process, in the 10 minutes we've been doing this, we went
from being
booths
closed in
to nothing. That's pretty amazing.
It's just us now.
It's pretty cool. I know. Literally, like we're out in the middle of the floor. I mean, I got crap all over the place. I'm gonna have to clean up. So Dustin, thank you
And my
for
pleasure.
coming out. Appreciate it. Thank you. You bet.